All right, this should be good.
Welcome to SinCast, presented by CinemaSins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the SinCast. This is Chris Atkinson with CinemaSins, along with the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello, hello.
And music video sins writer, Barrett Scher.
Howdy.
And we've been doing the years in film since we've been born for the past several podcasts. We started with 1975, and tonight we get to do 1982.
All I need are some tasty waves, a cool buzz, and I'm fine.
Probably a good year.
And as we talked about in a previous podcast, 1982 is an amazing year.
Yeah.
1982, right off the bat, there's just so many things that stand out. E.T., the Extraterrestrial, is one of the big ones. And it's a big one for me. It's one of the first movies I remember seeing in a movie theater. And I was all about some E.T. when I was 5. And I even played the Atari 2600 game, the legendary Atari 2600
in
game.
Mexico, Atari 2600.
That's right. That's right. And I had a copy of it and I played it like it was the best game ever made.
Yeah, you didn't know any different.
I didn't. Others on here, of course, if we're talking Spielberg, Poltergeist, a movie that there's been some sort of like conflict as to whether he directed it or Tobe Hooper directed it. A lot of people say Tobe Hooper directed it. A lot of people said, well, Spielberg was there all the time. He actually shot Poltergeist in about the same neighborhood as he did E.T., so he was able to go to both movies and just kind of see what was going on, because they both came out like around the same time. Like one came out a week after the other, like Poltergeist, I think, came out a week after E.T. But really good stuff. Anything else stand out to you guys?
Well, I think there are easily like maybe as close to as many as a dozen films you could make a legit argument for, either on quality or cultural impact from this year. Yeah. Unlike 81, where I was pretty sure it was going to come down to just about 2 movies, maybe 3. This one, I'm legitimately bracing for you guys to say anything. But for me, the sweet spot, this is the year that Wrath of Khan came out.
Yeah.
And by the time this episode hits the airwaves and is warming your ear holes, we will have already released a Sins video for that. I hope we get to discuss some of that as we move forward in this debate. It's also, I noticed, there are plenty of other top quality movies that I'll let Barrett mention, but really good year for cult films. I feel like we said this a lot, but Conan the Barbarian, Tron, there's one more. Oh, geez, Dark Crystal, Secret of Nim.
Yeah.
And then, you have got Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which is for some people as good as comedy gets.
Yep.
So just a really solid year. Barrett, what am I leaving out?
It's kind of like the Armageddon, Deep Impact, or like Volcano, Dante's Peak phenomenon. There's a lot of 2s in this year.
Oh, yeah.
There's a double dose of Sly coming at you with Rocky 3 with Clubber Lang and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then fucking First Blood, which is not like any Rambo movie that you've ever seen. To people who grew up a little bit later, they figured that Rambo was this, muscle-bound, crazy Vietnam sniping, like, human bullet machine. And it's completely opposite in First Blood. It's awesome. And Rocky 3 is one of my favorite Rockies, too. But then you had, Jeremy mentioned Conan the Barbarian, but you had kind of like a double dose of like leather cod pieces, because you had Beastmaster come out this year too. So, there's a lot of these things. You had Porky's come out along with Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So you had the sex crazed high school thing. So yeah, there was a lot going on. But I mean, what do you guys think about what I think was the Best Picture winner, Gandhi?
Well, first off, I just want to say that Porky's was 81. We did talk about that one.
Google says 82. I believe you because I've been around you long enough to trust your brain.
Sorry, I just
Well,
saw that.
no. Well, here's the thing. This is an IMDb thing. Because if Porky's came out in 1981 on some festival or something, and it actually came out in 1982, that's an IMDb thing. So it came out. Okay, so it came out in 81 in like Columbia, South Carolina.
Of course,
but that was like. Yeah, but I think it's because it was shot there.
Oh, okay.
I think it was shot there.
Doesn't make any sense.
But then it had its major release in '82. We're gonna get. By the way, we're gonna get into this with Crash because IMDb defiantly says Crash came out in 2004, mainly because of festival circuit and all that. But it also famously won Best Picture of 2005 because it came out in 2005. Yeah. So yeah, Porky's did come out in 1982. We did talk about Porky's though in 81, but it did come out March 19th as its major release or whatever. So sorry to break into that. I think we're going to run into this a couple of times. So
yeah, probably
it's good to know. People need to know this information.
Yeah. Anyway, you asked what we thought of Gandhi. I think that's a really good movie. It's too long and it's too. I mean, it's not like any of these other movies we're going to come up with.
It's long.
Yeah, it's super long. Ben Kingsley's amazing in it. But it really, for me, it only sort of feels like this weird trivia that's only in my head, and I don't think anybody else thinks about stuff like this. But Richard Attenborough directed Gandhi, and he beat Spielberg for E.T. for the Academy Award, and then later on was in Jurassic Park, playing John Hammond.
Yeah, look at that.
And he was okay with it. He said,
what?
Hey.
That's an even better example. We've got to do that topic I suggested once about like directors who act and actors who direct. Mm-hmm. It's like I forgot that he was a director, like completely. But he was. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. But the Academy in the 1980s started really going towards this. It has to be important. It has to be, something that is life fulfilling when they awarded stuff Best Picture. And as a result of it, the 80s are filled with like Best Picture nominees or winners that you probably haven't watched but once or even at all. A lot. There are a couple of really good ones, but they started going towards this epic, life-changing, important film in the 80s. Where in the 70s, you saw stuff like Annie Hall and Rocky and all that stuff getting wins. So
I think we probably ought to talk about Blade Runner a little bit.
Oh yeah.
This is after last week's conversation. This one's not going to help my reputation, but I'm not one of those people who like loves Blade Runner. Mm-hmm. I liked it. I don't feel like it's a masterpiece the way the people who love it do, but I recognize there's some greatness in it. It just didn't hit the right chords for me. I don't know how you guys feel. That's going to be blasphemous to some people.
It's one of the most controversial movies I have ever run across. Yeah. I am also somebody who doesn't consider it a masterpiece. Like it's not something that it's like I've got to plug this in today because it's so good. The thing about Blade Runner is that there's so much symbolism and there's so much interpretation of what's going on, and is Harrison Ford's character a replicant or not, and all this other type of stuff that people have been debating about for years and years. And of course, you had the writer say one thing, you said Ridley Scott say another thing. Like everybody's been like I guess kept that argument going for the longest time. But when you watch Blade Runner, it's not like it's something that just grips you immediately. It's not anything that I mean, I guess if you're a fan of it, it grips you immediately because the visuals are, classic Ridley Scott type stuff.
Yeah.
But man, I think I've been in the minority, but I know friends who are the same way. It's just like, I just don't have the same love of this that a lot of other people do. What about you, Barrett?
Yeah, it's kind of style over substance to me. And I mean, it's really good and it's really rewatchable. But I think as the years went by and the cult status of it grew and moody, stylistic type of presentation was kind of, everybody just loved it and put it in the stratosphere. I think more so than it deserved, because it was ahead of its time, probably.
Well, and I don't think this was a huge hit either. I think this was a pretty much a bomb at the box office. It got its reputation over, people renting it.
Yeah.
At those former Blockbuster videos that used to be around. It's got its reputation through that. I've seen the movie probably 6 or 7 times. I've really given it that many chances, and I've never been like, man, I love this movie so much. I do love Rutger Hauer in it. I think Rutger Hauer is really, really good. He's a standout as far as that movie. The visuals are great, and all that, all that symbolism and interpretation is a fun type of thing. But if you're just kind of plugging in the movie, it's not something you can plug in at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and do chores to it or whatever. It's not one of those type of movies.
Feed your lawn to it.
Yeah, feed your lawn to it. Yeah.
What about Diner? Did you guys ever see Diner?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Diner's good.
Okay, so I had a friend that introduced me to Diner. He was obsessed with it. He probably still is. And of course,
Diner was the kicking and screaming for the previous generation.
Oh,
and
that's a good call.
I mean, like the Noah Baumbach version.
That's a good call.
Yeah, I mean, it's these kind of Arrested Development guys reluctant to go into adulthood and everything, and it's got kind of the similar interactions and dialogue and that kind of thing. And
and tons of
a
big
certain
people,
age,
right? Like Mickey Rourke and Kevin Bacon and Tim Daly and Paul Reiser, and of course, the main thing I remember from this movie, having only seen it like 2 or 3 times, is the movie theater scene with the popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
He's sitting next to the pretty girl sharing popcorn, and he has somehow, surreptitiously, I don't know how he did this, stuck his dick through the bottom of the popcorn
He
bucket.
cut a hole in the box.
And she's casually reaching for popcorn and eventually touches his dick. And,
It's the power of the boner.
That's right.
I think if I remember right, he even gets laid with that girl later. Like, I think that works. Maybe not.
Well,
Maybe she just
and
screams at him.
Diner is also a movie that you look back on and go, "What the hell happened to Mickey Rourke?"
Yeah.
I mean, Mickey Rourke. The story is well known, but you look back in the 1980s, the guy was like a beautiful man. He was a beautiful man with a huge career. Like the 80s were huge.
Helps make like his performance in The Wrestler like ring so much truer to me. Like I freaking love that movie, and I think he's
me too.
fantastic in it. And he's not fantastic in Iron Man 2. I'm not trying to say he's always great, but that role was basically perfect for him after what he's been through, because he's kind of really lived it. Anyway.
Yeah. Another one that pops out to me is, again, Carpenter was on a roll. John Carpenter did The Thing in 1982, a movie that is it's really good. I have seen that several times, and it's one of those that it gets better, I think, every time I watch it. The whole who's actually an alien and who's not, and all that. It's done so well in that movie, and then just kind of like crapped on by the prequel that came out a few years ago, where they basically just said, all that stuff that they uncovered in the first movie, well, here's what happened. And it's like, we don't need to know that. Once again, we didn't need to know that. But The Thing is a really good suspense movie, and Kurt Russell also at his best.
Well, and I had never seen it until like maybe 6 or 7 months ago. It came on one of the HBO or something on TV, and I just decided to have it on, and I ended up getting sucked into it. It's great. You're absolutely right.
Another one that pops out, I spent a long time of my life avoiding Tootsie because I thought I had seen Mrs. Doubtfire. So I was like, so Tootsie for me came after Mrs. Doubtfire. And I was like, is this going to be a whole bunch of, like, haha, it's a man playing a woman. It's so funny. And then I watched it and I was like, wow, this is really good. This is a really funny movie. And it's the reasons behind Dustin Hoffman becoming a woman in this movie and everything, it's never done with that, like, silly Mrs. Doubtfire type of thing. So I was surprised by that movie when I saw it.
There's a couple of good musicals in this year that are worth mentioning. First of all, Annie, the original, or kind of the one that you think of cinematically of the Annie, which is really good. It was a really good restyling of it, and was kind of one of the movies that I probably watched, unfortunately, the most. Just kind of got played in my VCR over and over again. And speaking of being played in a VCR over and over again, probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Yes, absolutely. I have seen Pink Floyd The Wall a good 20 to 30 times.
The album is one of the best-selling albums of all time, along with Dark Side of the Moon, strangely enough, and Thriller, Michael Jackson's Thriller. And The Wall was the cinematic representation of it. And it was wild, man. I mean, things like that hadn't been seen before. Combining animation with with obviously the music and all that stuff. And Bob Geldof was kind of freaky as Pink. And the whole descent into drug addiction. It has one scene that always gets me. It's when he's smoking a cigarette on the couch, and he never ashes. And the cigarette burns all the way down to the filter.
Yep.
And retains the ash all the way through. For some reason, that was very impressive.
Oh yeah,
he didn't move. He was so in a heroin-induced comatose state that he just let this go.
Yeah, that's a perfect like midnight movie. I think there were a few theaters that would play that at midnight. It's perfect for because it's not like you don't have to really pay attention to the story or anything. It's all about the songs and everything. I do love it. I do think that when you first watch it, when you're like a teenager, you think it's such a deep movie and everything, and then later on, you're like, no, it's just kind of a random bunch of stuff happening. It means something to the people who made it, I guess.
Let's not forget the classic musical, The Verdict, starring Paul Newman.
Man, The Verdict is one of the Verdict is a movie that's going to really challenge for the top movie of 1982. I love The Verdict. I
can't tell.
What are you laughing?
I can't tell. It's over the internet. I can't see your face.
I think it's not sarcastic.
Yeah, no, I love The Verdict. I'm glad to hear that. I just think couldn't tell.
No, Paul Newman is great in it, and it's just one of those great stories, and it's a different kind of underdog story. I've watched The Verdict a couple of times. I probably should watch it even more, but it's just fantastic.
It is. It's great. I loved it.
A movie that you guys have heard this about Meryl Streep, right? Like Meryl Streep has never really been in a cinematic masterpiece. Mm-hmm. Like she's good and she can be great in whatever movie that she's in. But the movies that she's been in, hardly ever. And there's some people who will argue The Deer Hunter, and we've already said, no, we don't like that movie at all. But it's Sophie's Choice is another one of those movies. It has a great scene with her in it. But it's just the whole rest of the movie is just a nothing. It's one of those movies that in the early 80s they made lots of. They made a lot of these type of movies, and this one isn't very good, I don't think. Even though it's got like a 7.7 on the IMDb. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Sophie's Choice, but it's another one of the long line of Meryl Streep movies that are not great.
Well, we're going to find out here in a few minutes exactly how reliable IMDb can be when it comes to overall ratings and lists.
Oh, yes, that is true. But, that is so true.
I have not seen Sophie's Choice, so I can't really comment.
Anything else stand out to you guys? Because I know there's quite a few here.
Was 48 Hours the one that was super racist?
I think it was, but Beverly Hills Cop may have also had some too. I don't remember. I get those movies kind of confused sometimes. That's gonna hurt our friend Jonathan, who probably holds both of those movies in high regard. But I haven't seen them enough to be able to say yes. 48 Hours is the racist one. I think it is because Nick Nolte is the one who says all this crazy stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably it. I think I cut you off before. Were you going to mention a few more?
I was going to no. Actually, I mean, there are plenty more I could mention, but nothing that I think is even close to challenging for. Like, I was going to say something about Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Oh yeah,
I don't think that's anywhere near the best movie of '82. And
no,
80s child Steve Martin fan me watched that movie expecting something wildly different than what it is because it's so freaking subtle and it's more about that concept than it is any like laugh moments. But conceptually it was pretty unique for its time.
I'll name a few others, and then I think we can vote on this. An Officer and a Gentleman came out in 1982. Good movie. Probably won't challenge for our best picture. But it's good. This movie is up where we belong. Exactly. And that movie reminds you of that song all the way through it. It does that like, that little bit of notes of that song like 4 or 5 times all the way through it. A movie that just I remember when Airplane 2 came out. I don't remember when it came out, but I remember watching it and I was like, did the same people make this movie? No, they didn't. They completely were against it. But like, there were like they got a lot of the same people to come back and everything. They even got Shatner to come into this and make fun of his Captain Kirk. Everything. Airplane 2, not good. What else on here stood out to me? The King of Comedy. That's one of the most underrated Martin Scorsese movies.
Yeah. That's De Niro, right?
It is De Niro, and De Niro once again playing sort of a crazy person, but not like his Taxi Driver crazy person. This is more of a sort of a delusional type of guy. But the King of Comedy is him sort of like stalking Jerry Lewis and trying to get on his show and everything. And it's really well done, but it's just never considered one of his best. But it's I think it's just underrated.
For some reason, this reminds me, I'm not sure why, but did you ever see Talk Radio?
I didn't.
That's Oliver Stone, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was on the other day. And for some reason, I connect that movie to the one you're talking about. King of Comedy. I think it's probably just that I watched them both around the same time. But I only saw that one once, and I remember thinking it was really good, and why haven't I heard more about it? Right.
Another one that I love watching, it's not great by any means, but Creep Show. The George Romero, like it's an anthology, sort of like comic book horror anthology or whatever. But there's several like pretty fun stories in there, and every time it comes on, I stick around and watch it. And a lot of great people in it too. I love the Hal Holbrook one, and the one with Leslie Nielsen and with Ted Danson. Like his wife is cheating on him with Ted Danson and everything. Is just, it's a mixture of comedy and horror. That's just, you got to see it to believe it.
Speaking of that, did you see? I'm getting off track. I'm like Distractimus Maximus today. Did you see that SNL sketch that was a spoof of Dead Poets Society?
Yeah, I did actually. It was so fantastic.
It's only funny because it's so unexpected and so over the top. But God, I was not expecting. Like, they had me hook, line, and sinker expecting a verbal joke.
Yeah, I was doubled over laughing during that. It was really well done.
My wife came into the room. What are you watching? I was like, "You're going to hate this. You don't want to watch this."
I'm gonna say one more, then I think we can go on. The movie Missing. Jack Lemmon is in this one with Sissy Spacek, and he's trying to find his son who's been lost and who's missing in Chile, and it's based on a true story of this reporter who went down to Chile was having a sort of a revolution or a coup. I think it was a coup, and Jack Lemmon in that movie, it was interesting to watch him because I sort of knew Lemmon from a lot of comedies, and even Glengarry Glen Ross. You can even kind of say that's a comedy in some places, but he's straight up dramatic in this one. And it was just interesting to watch him, not like cracking any jokes or, or anything like that. He's just straight up, and he got nominated for an Oscar. He didn't win, but it's a really good performance. Something that, that's definitely another movie you don't put on at 3:00 to do chores. But anyway, we've named 1,000,000 here. What do you think's going to win on this? Barrett, you want to take us away?
I've actually got the round robin orders projected out for the next couple of weeks, and it's actually and this week it's Jeremy, Chris, and then me.
Okay.
All right, so I got to go first.
Yep.
Jesus. All right. Well, it's Wrath of Khan for me, and there are multiple reasons. It's still the best Star Trek movie. One of the first space adventure action films that just really works on all levels. And I like E.T. a lot. I do. But I never fell for it the way like others did. It seems like a lot of people in my peer group fell for it the way we fell for Star Wars. And that just it's never happened for me. I just always thought it was a good movie. And there's just nothing else after E.T., and Wrath of Khan. There's nothing else I think is better than Wrath of Khan, both for cultural impact, science fiction film impact, Star Trek impact, and just overall quality. I gotta go Wrath of Khan. Sorry.
You should be goddamn sorry. Motherfucker.
Somebody out there is going to be mad at me for stepping on E.T., and I'm not trying to step on E.T. I just don't love him the way I fucking love that Nebula fight at the end of Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. Well, look, you can defend that movie all you want to. You're a piece of shit.
I know.
I am going to go E.T. I think Spielberg's just on another level during this time. And this is the reason why I love movies, is because of him and because of all the movies he came out with in this era. Spielberg and Lucas basically ruled this era, 75 to 83. It was basically one after another, Spielberg and Lucas and all that. But E.T. in general just is, I always feel it when, E.T. is about to die and Elliot comes in and is screaming and everything. Basically, his audition tape. His audition tape was him sort of like being able to convey those emotions. That's how Henry Thomas won the role of Elliot, was being able to do stuff like that. And that all that scene, and then of course like the whole like bike ride to the forest and everything, and then it E.T. making the bike fly and you see it up against the moon and all this other type of stuff always got me. And so I always thought it was a great story, and it captured my imagination. So E.T.'s my pick.
Nice. I really had to talk myself out of First Blood because I love that movie so much.
It is weird though, right? Because that movie is so different from the other Rambos. It's so different. Even in like the 80s, like even in like when Rambo 3 came out or whatever, and you said, man, First Blood's a great movie, you'd probably still gotten some stares.
Yeah.
Because that's how much the character changed to that point. It's people forgetting that the first one was like actually trying to tell a story. Anyway, go ahead.
I know, man. And it was set in like the Pacific Northwest, and it was just kind of like a man against the world type of story. And I love it. I could watch that thing over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I love me some E.T. I'm tempted to just give it my vote for the score alone.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to it again today, and of course it's got when they take flight in the bike, it's like
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting to me, because John Williams did the score, and like as horny as he typically is, like horny by meaning like he uses a lot of horns.
Yeah.
Like imagine the opening of Star Wars,
Yeah.
like that's all done with strings, and it's like this nice warm. Anyway, we're gonna go another round because I think based on cultural impact for comedies overall, I don't think you can really negate the impact on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That influenced so much in the comedy landscape. It had some dramatic moments. It had some uncomfortable moments. It had a lot of Jennifer Jason Leigh nudity.
Yes.
And Had a lot of Phoebe Cates nudity.
It
So
did.
basically, I'm just voting it because of the nudity and the impact.
So you're actually voting Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
I am.
I see what you're saying. So Fast Times is yours. I have no argument with that, and especially the story behind the making of it is great too. If you could ever find it, just Cameron Crowe, basically doing 21 Jump Street before 21 Jump Street, and going into a high school and investigating how kids talked, and making a book first out of it, and then turning it into a screenplay. It is great. I love it. I watch it all the time.
That's not a bad pick. I can't argue that.
No. So we are now we've now got single votes for Fast Times, E.T., and Star Trek. So let's go to our second picks.
All right, and I went first, right?
Yep.
I'm going E.T.
Okay.
I have to respect its cultural impact and its overall greatness, and even if it didn't hit my sweet spot, I can't deny that it is, at the very worst, the second best film of 1982.
I'm going to go for my second pick, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It's just a funny movie, and it's oh man, I don't know if it's Sean Penn in that movie is just so good, and he's never done anything like it since. And he's been
intentional.
Probably. He's done. I mean, I think he's done a couple comedies. I think he was in. Was it that We're No Angels or whatever? And he apparently he did a voice in this Angry Birds movie. How the hell that happened?
Oh, in Mystic River. That was
Mystic River. That was really light entertainment. But yeah, Fast Times. He's so good, and that part where that dream sequence where he's talking to the reporter just cracks my ass up every time. And just I just love it for that, just the general frankness of it and just the honesty of it. It really does. I mean, I wonder how that movie would have been with a guy director. This is a female director doing this movie. And she puts in a lot of the stuff that's going to be staples of the 80s comedies, lots of nudity and everything, but they had to cut out like male nudity in that movie because that was one of those movies where they're like, nah, you can show Jennifer Jason Leigh like nearly completely totally naked, but you can't show a penis. That's gonna be really upsetting to people.
Tell that to
watching
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, exactly. Holy crap. But aside from that, it's just a good movie. It's just good. Great. I mean, it's a great comedy. Makes you laugh all the way through it. And it's just, I'm with Barrett on what he said on that. So that's my second choice.
Well, we have a solid number 2 then, but we also have a solid number 1 because I'm going to vote for E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's 1 first place and 2 second place. So that wins it.
Yep.
All you Trek fans out there, I just want you to know who's represented.
Well, you know what? I love Wrath of Khan as well.
I know you do.
I think it would probably be my third choice after all this. But then there's other stuff that I was considering. Poltergeist and The Thing. Those were all like in the mix too.
Secret of NIMH for me was my dark horse.
Oh my God. Secret of NIMH. I saw that hundreds of times back in the day. It used to come on HBO all the time, and I used to watch it. I don't think there's not been much made like it since. It's a scary ass cartoon.
It is.
Yeah.
And I had a friend back at a theater you and I used to work at together who once said to me, "You want to know what's fun? Take a bunch of drugs and watch Secret of NIMH." And I bet you can guess which friend said that to me.
I do know the friend.
And they're right. That's exactly what that. I mean, I don't have to take drugs to enjoy that movie, but I bet if I did, the enjoyment levels would go up several notches.
Well, and I mean, it's a movie that I don't think it won't. You'll never get that today because everybody believes kids are snowflakes. So they can't see anything disturbing. And that was a movie where you actually thought some of the main characters could die in it. That was.
Let's put fart and piss jokes in all the kids' movies, though, because that's okay.
Oh yeah, totally fine.
Everybody poops, so that's all. That is not off limits.
Yeah. So we've gone a little populist again in the past couple of three. I think we've gone populist. Empire Strikes Back, and then Raiders and now E.T.
That's because in those instances, the populace was right.
Yeah. Our picks look like a teenage boy's posters on his wall growing up.
You could argue that, when we were kids, we grew up with these movies and we've seen them so many times that to go against them is painful. We have to go with our heart on that. And, those are the movies we grew up with.
What's going to get interesting and also make these episodes really long is when we start getting into the era of opening on 3,500 screens and 5 movies opening each weekend. And because we're still in 82, right? E.T. played in my hometown for a year and a half before anything else ever even came to the theater.
Well, and it did. It's also a good point to say for this that we might start letting some of these slide. Because I go through this and I'm like, well, we got to mention that. That was a big movie. We got to mention that. That was a big movie. And now I'm getting to the point where it's like, okay, now we just need to name the ones that can win because we're starting to get into territory where we've seen everything.
I'll be all right if Avatar doesn't get brought up the year that it came out. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No one's going to vote that
and it won't. It won't. Although I may bring up the fact that I saw it twice. I saw it in 2D and 3D just to see if there was any difference. And they're like, 2D version, that sucked. Maybe I'll watch it in the 3D and it'll be better. Nope, it wasn't. Nope. It sucked either way. So let's just put that as a placeholder for Avatar. Like when 2009 comes up, we're not going to mention that bitch. All right. So today we're going to be talking about our best villains, our favorite villains in movies, and I think we're going to have some good ones here.
Good evening, Clarice.
My name is not Buddy!
The boy who lived, come to die.
I know I've been a dirty little bastard.
Who wants to start off on this?
Well, we've broken it down, just for the listener, we've broken it down into 3 categories, because best villain is pretty broad. So we're going to do animated. So best animated villain, best horror movie villain, and best action movie villain, to just give it a little bit of variety and spice. And I guess we start with animated because that's what's listed first on my personal notes. I'll go first for animated, and I thought about this long and hard. I have at least 5 animated villains on my list that I could make a good argument for that I really love. But the best, overall, in my opinion, is Syndrome from The Incredibles. And it's for several reasons. First, the voice performance is great. Jason Lee kills that role. And second of all, he's got, a legit, believable motivation, right? He was spurred by his hero, spurned. He's not a horse, so he was spurned. And, that would make somebody bitter if it happened at the right age and if it was the right kind of hero worship going on. And I also love that he doesn't have any superpowers. He uses his brain. He's just a super genius who builds weapons and sells them and makes money, all in an effort to sort of take down all the heroes, but most importantly, Mr. Incredible, the one that spurned him. And it almost works. And so he's capable, he's intelligent, the performance is enjoyable. I am on record thinking that movie is near perfect and Pixar's best. So I can think of no better than Syndrome from Incredibles. So
and it's kind of refreshing too, because most of the villains that we're used to in the comic book movie age are, they've been thrown into radioactive sludge, or they've experimented on themselves, or
tested their weapon on themselves.
Or something like that. This guy actually, as a kid, gets turned down by one of his heroes, and he turns that into rage, and it becomes like something that, he's been working on this for years and years and years, to the point that he can afford his own island out in the middle of wherever in the middle of nowhere.
Let's not forget, when he was rejected by Mr. Incredible, he had already invented working rocket boots. Like, it wasn't like he was just some stalker Taylor Swift fan wanting an autograph. Like, he had demonstrated some ability and is just dismissed instantly. So I totally buy his arc and his development.
Yeah, I love that, and that, of course, we both love that movie an amazing amount. It's one of my favorite movies of the past 15 years. So I'm with you on that one. Barrett?
Yeah, it's a good pick. My favorite villain, animated villain, the one that immediately comes to mind is from a very probably underseen movie, especially with Disney behind it. It was from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, that the one that came out in 1996, and that at the time had really groundbreaking animation for a 2D animation feature, and it had Demi Moore in it, and had a lot of it. Jason Alexander was one of the gargoyles. It's a great movie overall. You have to go see it, or you have to see it at some point. I think it's on Netflix. But the villain in that is Claude Frollo, who's this fine, upstanding Monsignor from the city of Paris, and who is just diabolical. I mean, he's everything that you associate with evil. He's self-righteous. He thinks that he's above everyone. He's a good man, but he gets whatever he wants to, and he takes whatever he wants to, and he ends up burning the whole freaking city down.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this in the theater with my girlfriend at the time. Hey, wherever you are. But when he sings that sex song, basically about Demi Moore, like
Hellfire, yeah.
I remember thinking, this is too much for a Disney movie. They crossed the line.
Yeah, no, he gets into it. He's like, this gypsy is going to be mine, and I'm a good guy and everything, but I'm going to have some sex with this gypsy. And I thought kind of the same thing at the time. It's dark, it's brooding, and it's the whole stuff in the underground, in the catacombs of Paris with the jester and everything is kind of dark and mysterious, but it's a terrific movie, and he is a perfect villain in that. He's not overpowering. He's not like Ursula in The Little Mermaid that can, or Jafar that can grow a zillion times their size. He's just a man that's pissed off and really hates people.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Quasimodo is voiced by Tom Hulce, right? Who was Mozart in Amadeus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which, when I first found that out, was, at the time, maybe one of the single most mind-blowing film facts I'd ever heard.
So here's the thing. I haven't seen Hunchback of Notre Dame since it came out. And I don't remember, I remember liking it okay. And I remember it being sort of a disappointment for a Disney movie as far as box office was concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but of course it came after, you had Lion King, which set an enormous bar that was impossible to reach. And then the next year they came out with Pocahontas, which did okay. And then Hunchback came out the following year. It used to come out with one every year. But it seems like it's gotten a little bit more of a following over the years. I've heard this movie mentioned a couple of times recently, so it's like I'm wondering if there's a sort of a building following for that movie that I didn't realize was happening.
Well, and after that came Hercules, right?
Yep.
Which I think I like more than most people. And I'm not sure if it's like the gospel music or just James Woods, whose Hades I almost nominated for Best Animated Villain because he's so funny in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
But it's weird, that stretch between Pocahontas and Hercules. It seems like, every other person you asked on the street would have a different favorite and a different one they disliked. It was a really polarizing run there.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of the reason with those movies happening at the same time as Toy Story and Bug's Life and all that were happening, Disney started, going more towards the 3D animation at that point, because people were sort of like avoiding, and then Tarzan came out in 99.
Right. Which is pretty good, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And so like you had a lot of, a string of movies there that people were like, well, I really loved Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and all that. That was great. But now you're kind of it feels like you're phoning it in. But a lot of those movies have great followings behind them, but they just weren't doing what Toy Story and all that was.
But I do remember that guy being dark as fuck, Barrett. So I can't fault your choice there, because I walked out of that movie feeling like, man, if I had kids, I'd be mad if I showed them that movie.
All right. So I am going to go and of all time, I'm going to say something that's hardly of all time here. I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot. I mean, if you talk about a lot of the Disney villains, you have a lot of wicked queens and you have a lot of these, type of animated villains or whatever. But the one that just, I always come back to is Saddam Hussein in South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut.
Hey, let's fight.
He's so absurd in that movie. The whole thing is absurd. He is a villain over Satan. That's how much of a villain he is. And the fact that Saddam Hussein is gay lovers with Satan. I mean, it's, come on.
And
How's that happen? Yeah, he's the top. Yeah, unreal. But like, they gave him that voice that they give it's a really crazy, I love you, that type of thing. And I will say that to people a lot. If there's like a dead silence somewhere, I will always find a way to just put I love you in there somehow.
What's funny is that I do that to my wife, and she's never seen this movie. She has no idea what I'm referencing. I'll just say I love you, and she'll smile like I just paid her the awesome compliment. Funny voice.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, they turn Saddam Hussein into, well, I mean, it's funny. I mean, is it an exaggerated version of him? I mean, who knows? But the fact that he's like this sex hungry, maniac bent on world destruction. What's funny is that he's so bad that Satan coming back to Earth is not a big deal. Satan just wants to be on Earth. That's all he wants to do. With that great Up There song and everything, he just wants to be on Earth. But Saddam Hussein wants to rule and make everything not living like Scar does in Lion King and all these different things. And it's amazing to me that they could turn a real a person from real life into an exaggerated animated character.
Yeah,
like
your
that.
best point is that he actually manipulates Satan himself.
Right.
So, I mean, how does it get more evil than that? So.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what came to my mind.
Nice.
He's clearly not the best, but he's one of the most memorable.
I can get behind that logic. I like both of your choices, even though I like mine too. But any honorable mentions we want to throw out there quickly before we move on to the next genre?
Whoever killed Bambi's mom?
Oh, wasn't that a dinosaur?
It was. Well, it was a dinosaur in 1985. They changed the narrative on that. But,
I remember that. I very nearly went Sid from Toy Story.
Ooh, yeah.
Which I think is a very defensible position because from the toys perspective, I'm not sure there's a human that could be scarier than that guy. And it's really, I mean, that movie's great, and I think even little kids can enjoy it. But there's a darkness to Sid that is palpable, I think, and real feeling. So I wanted to throw that one out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's a serial killer in the making, isn't it? And until the toys take over. Although there is a great Cracked article, I think, from Dan O'Brien, who we've met before when he came out and everything. He wrote something about Sid and Toy Story and how that particular event is actually like a crushing blow to him. Is that kid is going to be crazy for life after that because he can't tell that story without anybody thinking he's going to be in a mental institution after
Britney Spears, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I definitely agree with Sid.
All right, so should we move on to action?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to cheat and throw out a quick one I didn't choose that's not even action, but I feel like if we're talking about best villains and we don't bring up HAL 9000, then we have not done our job.
Mm-hmm.
And the HAL 1000 paved the way for, Skynet and the machines and the Matrix, which is where we get to my actual pick, and Agent Smith from the Matrix. This is a role that introduced most American audiences to this actor. And he just chews that shit up, man, in ways that, I mean, even in the second and third movies, he's still chewing it up while like Keanu and everybody else has just gone dead. And it's just the speech he gives to Morpheus about the virus. There's another organism on this planet that behaves the same way. It's just,
I love that.
He's just as powerful as Neo. So when they get to that ultimate fight in the third movie and all the way along when they fight, they're mostly equals. The snark, the delivery, the performance, and then just the true power, because at the end of it all, he's a bigger threat to anything than anything else, right? The machines let Neo go in to fight him because they're afraid of what Agent Smith is going to do. And he could decimate the humans as well. He's already proven he can go into the human world. And so for all those reasons, and obviously the fact that it's my favorite movie of all time, I'm a homer, I go Agent Smith from The Matrix.
All right.
And Hugo Weaving had a run there between the Matrix trilogy and the Lord of the Rings trilogy where he was just owning, you know.
Well, and he's so great and so different in both roles.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. It's I always think about Hugo Weaving, and this is sort of a tangent, but like Hugo Weaving was in 2 different big trilogies at once, and so was Ian McKellen. He was in X-Men at the same time as Lord of the Rings, and then you had Orlando Bloom, who was in Pirates of the Caribbean, and all that. It's crazy. None of those actors by themselves are responsible for the success for those movies, as the stratospheric success of those movies, but they were in like at least 6 movies that made billions of dollars combined.
Yeah, there was that glorious time in the late 90s when Jeff Goldblum had been in the highest grossing movies of all time just because of Independence Day and Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the most bankable star. Not really.
He's just kind of lucky, but all right, we'll go with it.
Misinterpreting your math there.
Yeah. It's like giving Billy D. Williams credit for the last 2 Star Wars.
And Batman.
And Batman. So I would always read these things that the theater would get, like they would show like these movies are coming out and here's some actors who are in it, and they would show the actors' box office tracking and everything, and they'd show all these movies and they'll be like, okay, that's not really a Jennifer Love Hewitt movie, but that's fine if you want to give her all the credit for,
Dude, The Suburbans is absolutely a Jennifer Love Hewitt movie. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, and she was entirely responsible for that huge bank that Can't Hardly Wait made.
Yes, absolutely. It had nothing to do with the partying, booze, and Guns N' Roses.
As a side note, that movie did not make huge bank, but it's a huge cult hit anyway. We're
Jenna
way
Elfman's
off track.
in that movie. She plays an angel.
Yeah.
Jenna Elfman, remember her? Like, she did a hit sitcom and several
She was a
roles.
big it girl and everything, and then
what she's doing now.
Now what? All right, Barrett.
Man, there's a lot of good ways that you can go with action.
Yep.
We could spend another hour just on action alone. And there's a couple that I think I want to get to that because Jeremy took them first, and I'm not going to mention it because I don't know which way Chris is going to go. So I'm going to go with Voldemort. That is at least for the last 20 years as emblematic of movie villainy and book villainy as you can possibly get.
As long as you don't analyze his plans too deeply, I agree with you.
Oh my God, that's what I was about to say. It's just that, like, especially in Goblet of Fire, that's the worst. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, actually, you kind of feel bad for him after 5 movies into this, where it's like his plan would have been perfect if it weren't for this one particular thing that went wrong at the very end, and like a phoenix shows up, or like, like all of a sudden something, crazy happens and it foils his plans. All the guy wants to do is come back and, rule the world and everything.
Well, there's this one magic that we haven't talked about in the other books that are suddenly important now, and we don't know if anybody will be able to do it, but maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to do it this time.
All right,
and
side note.
Yep.
Future podcast discussion. Most worthless heroes ever. Harry Potter is my first nomination.
Yes.
That motherfucker does nothing in 8 movies except die. That's good. Like, the only other thing he does that's good is be around the right people who know how to do shit at the right time. Like, he himself does nothing. Nothing.
Yep. I agree.
Anyway, on Voldemort, I would say, I think Order of the Phoenix is my favorite Harry Potter movie, and I think it is 100% because of that Voldemort-Dumbledore fight in the Ministry of Magic at the end, which is just thrilling. Like, I can find no fault with it. Every time I watch it, I get exhilarated. And I remember saying at the time, and maybe even in the Sins video, this was before Force Awakens, but this is more thrilling than any lightsaber bullshit from the prequels in Star Wars had to offer. It's just fantastic. And Ralph Fiennes eats that role up. He's generally very good in everything he does, but he's extra creepy in this. And now that may be the performance or maybe the missing nose. I've never really quite known for sure which one it was. I can't fault that choice, Barrett. I think this is going to be a love fest because we're all smart people who make good choices.
Exactly.
That's correct.
Chris, what's yours?
Okay. See, now I thought for sure that Jeremy would say Hans Gruber. Now I've got two different ones that are so good. Like you said, you could take a whole hour doing this.
Yeah, you can name two, man. I'll give you the leeway.
So here's the thing. I'm going to name Hans Gruber, but I'm going to have to name T-1000 also in this. But in our continuing love of robots on this podcast, although I think our last love of robots got lost. So, anyway, Hans Gruber is the reason why he's a great villain is because he's smart. There's so many things that he does in this, and really just an example of it, and it's one of my favorite scenes in a movie in general is when he runs into John McClane he's looking for his detonators or whatever, and John asks him who he is, and he knows that whole roster of people that's in the building, and he's like, I'm name's Clay. Bill Clay.
Yeah.
And the camera zooms up and it shows not only that it's Clay who works on the floor, but it's William Clay. Like he knew to change it to Bill, like as a friend would. And I've always loved that scene just for that general reason. And his whole idea is smart too. I mean, it's one of those movies where, like, if it wasn't for McClane, he would have gotten away with this, all of his plan was absolutely perfect. It's just the fact that McClane is in there and he's killing a lot of his guys, and it's not going to work. But
this is, we're talking about Alan Rickman here. This is a performance that I think is singular. Like, how many actors at that point in time can you slide into that role and have this guy Gruber turn out the same? Like, I think maybe very few, right? Even somebody like Jeremy Irons struggled, 2 movies later to do even close to the kind of justice Gruber did, Rickman did with Gruber. Again, I can't fault you. Gruber was on my list, just not the one I chose to go with overall. But he's great all the way up into his death. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I just think that we don't see that with villains anymore, and I'm struggling to think of. I'm sorry to pick on Marvel again. I don't mean to do this, but there's no who's like Hans Gruber in any of those Marvel movies.
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, maybe later, maybe.
What about
we'll see in Black Panther.
Andy Serkis in there for Age of Ultron, and then what? Like, are we going to see that guy again? Did we just waste that guy? What the fuck?
I don't know, but there doesn't seem to be anybody who thinks their plan out like Hans Gruber did in that movie. To think about all the different things that he plans out, it's just fun thinking about his plan, and so that's why he's up there for me, and I wish more villains would be like him. And a lot of people point to he's the cackling kind of villain. He's like a sarcastic whatever. A lot of people just point to his line readings, which are also, of course, great. I mean, and Alan Rickman just is great, but just the character himself, forget that even Alan Rickman's in it. It's just his character itself is great. So,
yeah.
I will say the T-1000 was the one. It was the one that I was going to say if Hans Gruber wasn't mentioned. T-1000 is another villain we haven't seen much anything like it since.
Yeah.
That's T2 is basically a horror movie. With Robert Patrick playing a Michael Myers type in there, but in this case, it's something that's not supernatural. It's just, it's a feat of technology we have never seen.
Yeah.
And the effects in that movie are still great, even 25 years later.
Well,
that's the creepy part.
Relentless. Sorry, Barry.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's the point. Like, it never stops. Like, it's never going to stop. That's what's like gets under your skin, is like, this guy's not going to stop until you're dead. And
yeah,
that's it.
And and you can do everything you want to it, but it's gonna get back together and go after you after that. Like they explode this thing a couple of times, and he's just like, oh well, you know what? I have this ability where all my pieces come back together.
Well, and this was the big coming out party for Robert Patrick. This was his big, huge first role, but it's worth noting he's in Die Hard 2. Ironically, as one of the special ops terrorist guys. So, Anyway, all right. Should we move on to horror?
Yeah,
horror. All right. Well, I predict some out there will call this a cheat. I don't believe it's true. I'm calling the best horror villain of all time the alien from Alien.
Yeah, that's not cheating at all.
I believe this is a horror movie that is also science fiction. I believe one of the things that makes it such a great villain, in addition to, last time we talked about this on the podcast, Chris, you were talking about how sparingly it's used, and it's always there in the background, but, it's almost like Jaws. It's not like in every frame. It's not like screaming at the camera. It's more about what's lurking that you can't see. But we know so little about it. The characters know so little about it. It starts out small on somebody's face, then it comes out of somebody's stomach, then it's huge and it has acid blood, and that adds to the fright for me, at least, is that I don't know. The first time I'm watching this movie, I have no idea what this thing's capable of, and it seems to be constantly changing. And along with The Shining, I always list the Alien movie as my favorite horror. So I have to go with the Alien from Alien. What do you guys think?
Well, I totally agree with you, and I think most people who know movies are going to go along with that and say that Alien's essentially a horror movie in space. But the thing is exactly what you were sort of telling. I said earlier with this. There's something about it, and it's going to be the villain that I come up with has the same trait, but there's something to having seen what a horror villain can do, and then just taking him out, but making sure that the audience always believes that it can come out at any time.
Right.
And that means every scene is set up for for you to be nervous about it. And there's something to be said about that every time you watch a movie. A good horror movie is one that, really just like, it could just be sitting there talking, and then the alien could be sitting there plotting to come down and attack and everything.
Why don't we skip Barrett for now and go right into yours, which seems to tie into mine.
Okay. Well, I feel like Michael Myers in the first Halloween is sort of a model of what that alien thing is. I mean, especially the way Carpenter shoots it, there's always and I've mentioned this before in other podcasts, but he'll move the camera very subtly, and you'll see Michael Myers in the background. And then the camera will kind of move back, and then whatever, the next time the camera moves over, he's not there. Now, it does make you wonder, what the hell is he doing? Maybe he's just plotting, he's plotting. He's trying to get into this,
right. He's taking notes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, man. He's taking notes. And he's like, you know what? She's always in the kitchen at 8:35. I'm going to put that down in my little notebook, and we will see if that comes back later. But he's a guy who's escaped from a mental institution, and he's coming back on the year anniversary and all this other stuff, or the whatever year anniversary it is, on Halloween, which, if you have somebody going around in a mask, people are like, well, it's just a guy trick-or-treating, so it comes down to, there's a lot of misidentification and all that, going on, but he's always there. He's always wandering around that neighborhood. he could come out of any place. So that's why I like Halloween so much.
It's the total sense of dread that is exactly what the Alien is and what Michael Myers is where it's the same thing almost with Voldemort, not to get too far off track, but like it's more of like he's creepy because of how people talk about him and like how like his legend is more so than, the performance itself. And that's what Michael Myers is. It's the potential at any point of him wrecking shit and doing awful things.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go with another movie that some people say is not a horror movie, but is absolutely a horror movie, and that's The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's a horror movie. I mean, it really is.
It's a horror movie, and what I think of when I think about horror movie villains is it's kind of few and far between, but it's the ones that really give you chills when you watch them, and which is the same as Alien and Michael Myers. But Hannibal Lecter gives you chills. I mean, it may just be at this point where we're so ingrained and we take it for granted. But when you first watch this performance, man, that was creepy. I mean, you didn't know what was going on in his head. You didn't know. I mean, when he just kind of puts his face against the glass, talking to Clarice Starling at the beginning and talking just very calmly about a census taker trying to test him and his liver. That freaks you out, man. And there's no substitute for a smart villain and a villain that you have no clue what he's going to do, he or she is going to do. And that's my favorite type.
Well, and think about how they set up Hannibal Lecter before she even interviews him and everything. They talk about how, don't get too close and all that. And like, what could he do? He's behind this freaking plexiglass or whatever the hell it is. And this and everything. But so there's that moment where she passes something along to him in that little drawer or whatever, and he looks at it, and then when he slams it back, you're like, okay, he's just playing with it. But
his performance makes two other movies that are kind of average really watchable, right? Like with Red Dragon and Hannibal. And those have both come on in the last month, and I have watched both of them, and it is solely, I'm convinced, it's solely because he's so good in this role. It almost makes me never want to meet him in real life at all, because he must have a little something in him that he can tap into to do this so well, right? It's creepy as fuck.
Yeah, it really is. And then we're even forgetting the fact that once they start giving him privileges and they take him to Memphis and he's like in that, that new jail cell and everything, and what he does to sort of get out of it and everything. It's not only insane, but it's brilliant and scary and just all those different things at once. And you're just like, man, this guy is such a brilliant bastard. I actually hope he gets away with this.
He was on my list for sure, Barrett. So, I mean, kudos on the choice. And who's going to argue with that? I mean, what's awesome to me is that in each of the films, there's a different killer that somebody's after for the most part. And he's just being consulted. But he's still scarier than the killer who's out on the loose killing people, because even though he's behind a glass cell or whatever, walking in the gym with a chain tied to him, he's still freakier by 10 times than Ray Fiennes in Red Dragon.
Absolutely.
Well, and we don't need to classify a movie as, Silence of the Lambs, could be a number of things. It's also a horror movie. It's kind of like Seven. Seven's a horror movie, but it's also got, it's a thriller mystery type of thing or whatever. It also brings up another great horror villain, John Doe, especially since he's not even seen until like the last 30 minutes of the movie. Just the stuff that he's doing, as a side note, it's funny to think about the little notebooks that he's writing in, that when they go into his apartment for the first time and Morgan Freeman reads from it and everything. Those notebooks were actually like written completely out by somebody.
Oh yeah.
Like they weren't just scribbles. They actually wrote a whole bunch of stuff like the ravings of a crazy man in there. And it was all for like 2 seconds of of movie time. But that just goes to show the detail they went into with that character before we even see him. So I guess that would be my honorable mention, but we could go forever on those guys too. Anyway.
Yeah, we could. Kaiser Soze.
Yeah, Kaiser Soze. All right, so we have done. Are we going to do more villains, or do we need to get to this next thing?
I mean, we should probably save that for another podcast, because I've got one that really should have taken the whole thing in action that I'm going to save until later on. So,
like many of our topics, we can come back to it for a sequel.
Yeah. So we will come back to it at some point, because it's ripe with, there's tons of villains to go for.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to our Q&A.
Question.
I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
And what is the actual question?
All right,
Jared?
so the question was, and we're kind of going by the book with the question, and basically they wanted to know, popular films, really well-reviewed films, top 250 IMDb films that we have not seen, which is I think is interesting, because in many cases, if not most, one of the three of us will have seen it, even if one or two of us haven't.
Right.
But before we go any further, let's talk about this IMDb 250 top films list, because
it's insane.
Number 62 is The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
And I sent you guys a list last night of the movies in the top 100 I hadn't seen, and in the middle of two movies is the phrase, how the fuck is Dark Knight Rises 62 on this fucking list?
Yeah.
It's not a good movie. It's not a great movie. This is evidence that most of the voting occurs opening weekend, if not the first week, right?
Well, IMDb does weight the voting, I do believe. They do weight it. So like in that opening weekend when everybody's like, I love Civil War, and then they go and they make it, 10 out of 10 and all that. That's why Civil War is like 117 on the list or whatever. But after time rolls by, I think they've sort of got this on an algorithm now, but there's a lot of people who retroactively come back and watch a movie. Like, for instance, The Professional, a movie I love, by the way.
Yeah, me too.
Is number 27. It makes no sense. I mean, the movie's very good, but come on. I can come up with probably 100 movies better than The Professional.
Well, and see, that's sort of the point. And I want to make that a public statement before we go any further, is that we could use the AFI list, or we could use the Rotten Tomatoes list, or we could use the IMDb list. The fact of the matter is, there's going to be shit on that list you don't think is good, and you're not going to agree 100% with any of these lists. So for the sake of just picking one and going with the question asker's determination, we went with IMDb. Yes, there are movies on this list that probably don't deserve it. There are probably movies that deserve to be on here that aren't. That is not the point. The point is, what great movies have Barrett, Chris, and I missed out on that the others can chide them for missing? And we will move forward with that being the main thought.
Okay. So I guess I'll go first on this, because I've only not seen 7 that are in this list.
You motherfucker, the whole 250?
Well, of 100. Okay. We're doing 100, right?
That's fine.
Yeah, I imagine if we went to the 250, it would still probably be a low number, though, because, I mean, I've seen a lot of these movies.
I've got like 21, so you're a bastard and I hate you.
But the ones that so I didn't see Spirited Away. I actually started watching Spirited Away when our theater got it. And then it was just one of those nights where I was like, I am too tired to watch this movie. It was like 1:00, and that's not a movie that you just, you have to be up for it to watch it. So I still never got the chance to see it, and I know it's good. I know it is. So I missed it. The Intouchables, a movie that came out a couple of years ago. It wasn't long ago. It was like a few years ago. Yeah. The only thing that I remember about The Intouchables is that, and also at the theater, we had a special showing for Jerry Seinfeld when he came through.
Interesting.
I'll never forget that. And I actually wanted to watch the movie, just to make sure everything was cool, before that showing or whatever. But for whatever reason, I couldn't watch it.
Have you seen either of those? Because those are both on my list as well. I haven't gotten to Spirited Away, and Intouchables is on my list. It's supposed to be amazing. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Have you seen either?
No, those are two that none of us have actually seen. But there is one, or actually maybe a couple. There is one that neither of you guys have seen, and that I have, and that's Sunset Boulevard.
Oh, well, can you tell us about it?
Well, it's terrific. I mean, it's very, very classic cinematic. It's what you think of when you think of like kind of golden age of Hollywood. Was famous for one of the lines of "I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille." And that was Gloria Swanson, I believe. And no, it's really good. I mean, the acting is terrific. It's about kind of a older, washed up actress, and kind of it actually features a cameo by Cecil DeMille, actually, strangely enough. But no, it's really good. It's worth watching. It's one of those 1950s films that actually comes on. I wake up early on Sundays, and it comes on like Turner Classic Movies. And no, that's a really, really good one to watch. And I'm frankly disappointed in both of these. I wouldn't say I'm angry. I'm just disappointed.
I can't tell you how much that affects my current mood.
Oh my God. You guys are going to be very disappointed in me.
The other ones that I haven't seen are Grave of the Fireflies, which is an anime movie that came out in 1988, and I had never heard of it before.
Yeah, me too.
And I was looking at it, I was like, why? I mean, usually I hear of all the big ones. So it's weird that I've never heard of this. So I haven't seen that. I have seen Akira, which is a movie that people always cite as one of the best anime movies.
I saw Princess Mononoke.
Yeah, I did too. There's Once Upon a Time in America, I was surprised to see in the top 100.
Yeah, me too.
That's a movie that I've never seen it, and so I can't really judge, but I remember like nobody liked that movie when it came out.
I saw it. It's long as hell. But there's nothing memorable. I can't say anything about it. But on my list was Once Upon a Time in the West.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think there's any connection. I really don't know. But
well, it's really just in name only. Like it's kind of like how Robert Rodriguez called Once Upon a Time in Mexico. They make it sound like it's real epic and everything. Okay. So I mean, there's really no other connection to it. Unless it is Sergio Leone. That's why.
Wow. So he did both Once Upon a Time in America and the West?
Yep.
Wow. So that's intentional.
So it's sort of his way of saying, this is going to be epic, motherfuckers. Better watch this shit. Yeah. No, I have never seen that. But I know that like a restored version of it or whatever came out. I guess it got cut up or whatever when it came out in theaters, and then they came out with the director's edition or whatever, director's cut, and everybody was like, you know what, this movie's a lot better than I thought it was, even though it's like an hour longer.
Yeah, that doesn't ever work for me.
Yeah. But
speaking of Westerns, I have on my list, and this is maybe one of the most. I'm more ashamed of this than almost anything else on my list, but I've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Also, Sergio Leone.
Yeah.
Keeping with the One Accident.
Yeah, that's his whole trilogy. Basically, you have him, but
it's the Dollars trilogy, right? The Fistful of Dollars and a Few Dollars.
Yeah, it's a Man with No Name. Yeah, but The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, good movie. I'm not as high on it as a lot of people are, but I like it. It's a good movie.
Oh, really?
Well,
what did you love it?
Oh yeah, I think it's great, man. I think that's probably my favorite of that trilogy: the Fistful of Dollars and a Few Dollars More, and then Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like three roustabouts, and they're actually like they're literally like the good, who's Clint Eastwood, and the bad and the ugly. I forget, Ernest Borgnine or something like that is in it.
It's Eli Wallach.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's really good. It from the cinematography and like it's the iconic like sweeping Western, and of course the Ennio Morricone doing the score and all that stuff. And that's definitely worth checking out. But one of the things that I'm ashamed of not seeing, and that's up at 26 on the IMDb list. I don't know if it's worth being that high, but Jeremy was saying that it's definitely worth watching. Is Life is Beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Great movie.
Was Roberto Benigni's big breakout performance, which he is still yet to follow up, I think.
Well, maybe in America.
Yeah. He's doing okay in foreign markets.
Yeah, but Life is Beautiful is a great movie just because it's so unusual. Like, it's not your typical Nazi war camp type movie, especially considering at the time that it came out. There was a string after Schindler's List. It was a lot of, rightfully so, depressing movies.
I think this was even the same year as Saving Private Ryan, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. There was 3 movies in '98 that were all World War II, and it was this, Saving Private Ryan, and Thin Red Line, and then you had the 2 Elizabeth movies, Elizabeth and Shakespeare in Love. Those were the 5 nominees.
Well, if you don't know, Life is Beautiful is about a Jewish guy who he spends the whole movie basically trying to convince his son that the Nazi occupation and the concentration camps and all of it is just this game. And so he acts goofy and fun and basically continually lying to his kid for the betterment of his kid's outlook on life. And it's every bit as soul crushing as that sounds. And yet it is still touching and moving and funny. My wife just watched it a couple months ago, after me nagging her to death. And I think I cried when I saw this in the theater. Like, it's that moving. It's a great film. I love it.
At the very beginning of it, when they first get in the camp, he tells all the people, he's like, I'm going to translate. Nobody let on that I'm not telling the truth to my kid or whatever. And of course the Nazi guys don't know either. So like he comes up and the Nazi guys like telling everybody like, this is going to be awful. You're only going to be able to do this and you're only going to be able to do that. And you can't do this unless I say so. And then meanwhile, the translation from Benini is like, we're going to play a game. Whoever is silent, the silent the longest gets to win a prize and all this other stuff. Yeah. And we're trying to win a big prize at the end and all that. And the kid's like enthralled with this, so it's a great movie, really. Really.
I mean, what I took from it is that I regularly call my wife Principessa, which is his pet name for his wife, Italian for I think princess, but and Joshua is his son's name, but he says Je suis. Anyway, it's a great movie. Now listen, we shared last night with each other, and so I know I've missed one that Chris loves. And I know Chris has missed one that I love. Mm-hmm. And so in the next few minutes, Chris, I need you to sell me Amelie or Amelie.
Okay. Amelie.
And I will sell you Singing in the Rain. Ooh, okay. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Amelie is, first off, it's great mainly because of Audrey Tautou, who is just cute as a button, very much Audrey Hepburn-esque in it. It's a type of a fantasy movie, but it's, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who did like City of Lost Children and,
Alien Resurrection.
Yeah. Alien Resurrection. But this one is a masterpiece from him. But mainly, Audrey Tautou is so likable in it. And it's basically just her, going through life and trying to figure it out and all that type of stuff. But there's like scenes in there where she's just thinking about how many people are having orgasms right now. And so the scene, so the movie cuts to like all these like different, you should go ahead and do that as an outtake. And everything. And like, there's like this, like, just like this quick montage of people having sex. God. And she turns to the camera and she's like, Kens, and it's 15, she's and she's like, Amelie does not like, and it shows like people, like there's like one of the things she doesn't like is characters in movies who don't look at the road when they're talking to each other and in a car, and it shows a scene. Yeah, exactly. It shows the scene where the characters are in the car, a guy's driving, and he's just sitting there having a conversation with his head turned towards the girl the whole time, and stuff like that. And there's the mystery of the guy who keeps taking a picture in the photo booth and all that. Like, who's this guy? Why does she keep running into this guy? But there's like this sort of serendipitous romance that's happening. She wants to go out with this one guy, and I remember the actor's name is Matthew Kasovitz, I believe is his name. She wants him, and he's like, I don't remember if he's even aware of her or whatever, but like the whole movie, she's hoping that he'll notice her and all sort of stuff. But it's such a magical type of movie. The stuff that I just talked about is in there in force, and it's well shot, and just you'll fall in love with Audrey Tautou. I certainly.
What's
did.
fascinating to me is that I feel like I've never heard that about this film. Like, I thought it was just a cute, probably romantic film with an actress who was really magnetic. But nobody's ever told me, like, it almost sounds like Stranger Than Fiction, the way you describe it, and which is a movie I love, in terms of the kind of unique way of shooting and perspective and whatnot. And I'll give you a pat on the back. The last 5 minutes of you describing the movie has made me want to watch it. So.
Yeah, it's just fun. I mean, and yeah, it's got elements of what you were just saying there, but it's not a common romantic comedy or by any means.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I speak English, so foreign language films are like, the devil, right?
But it's, yeah, exactly. I don't like reading. We don't like reading. That's why. Ding. Yeah, exactly. So we don't watch those foreign films.
Well, listen, let me tell you why you should watch Singing in the Rain.
Oh yeah, let's go for it.
Now, I was raised on White Christmas from the age of 3 on to today. I have seen that movie 1 to 3 times every Christmas. My mom and her sister fell in love with it when they were girls. They have imparted that onto me and my brother. I can no longer differentiate if White Christmas is good or bad on a objective kind of scale. I'm completely bought in. But if I were to list my second favorite musical, it's Singing in the Rain. And there are multiple reasons why I think you would like this. First of all is that Gene Kelly's voice is fucking velvet. I mean, just like Bing Crosby, maybe even more so, it is so fucking smooth, dude. His voice is unreal. And Donald O'Connor, the comedy foil, his dancing is so crazy. And it's interesting that I'm talking about this in White Christmas in kind of the same breath, because both films have a really good singer and a really good dancer kind of paired up, and they're both doing dancing and singing. But Donald O'Connor's Make 'Em Laugh, where he runs off the walls and up over the couch and does the kind of acrobatics that would make John Ritter blush. It's physical comedy set to music, and it's amazing. But all that aside, the reason I think you should watch this movie, you, Chris, is that it's about the movies, and it's about the first talkie, right? Where they had audio to go along with the visuals. And the girl they've been using as this actress has the high-pitched fork on the chalkboard annoying voice. So they bring in Deborah, what's her name, to be the audio voice of this beautiful blonde girl. And of course, there's a love triangle with her and Gene Kelly and whatnot. And all the drama spills out from that. But just the film historian in you alone will probably enjoy all of the jokes and references and in-jokes and whatnot with regard to moving from, sound-free movies to talkies. And I don't know, Barrett, have you seen this film? Can you weigh in?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's Debbie Reynolds, man. Debbie Reynolds right. Before she went on to her illustrious Vegas career.
Yep.
But no, it's terrific. I'm reminded of this, and I actually really want to see it again. I love these dancing movies, and there's these choreographed, the Gene Kelly and the Fred Astaire and all that stuff. I just watched that. Used to watch it all the time with my grandmother and with my mom too. So that brings back good memories. But Singing in the Rain was always in the rotation between that and White Christmas and Holiday Inn and all the Fred Astaire movies, the Ethel Merman movies.
Yeah,
sorry, that's a departure. But there was just weird, like in the early, I guess this is 50s or something like that. They had like genre movies of like synchronized swimming and like tap dancing.
There's a huge synchronized swimming in The Great Muppet Caper, which you were raving about on the last podcast.
Yes.
So for the record, absolutely. I just want to point that out.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that stuff. So,
I will definitely watch Singing in the Rain at some point. It's not because I have avoided it. It's just that it's never been on the radar. I hear about it all the time, but it's I think it's one of those things where they tell you about Singing in the Rain all the time. Every Oscar telecast has the Gene Kelly thing going through and it's like, all right, I'm tired of hearing this bullshit. I'm never going to watch this movie.
Well, it's not like Barrett, help me. What's the Pygmalion musical movie with Audrey Hepburn?
Oh, My Fair Lady? Yeah.
Like, it's not like that. My Fair Lady has some good scenes and some good songs, but it's 4.5 fucking hours long and it's boring as shit. And by the time it's over, you're going to be like, what the hell? Like, Singing in the Rain is not like that. It's always engaging and interesting. And I just think because of your love of film, You will like it. By the way, this is going to be the longest podcast ever.
Yeah, which is fine.
It is fine.
But yeah, and just to touch back on Amelie and whatever, I read the synopsis because it was hard for me to try to describe what was going on in it. But basically, she's trying to help all these people in her life all the way through it. And it's basically like she always helps other people, but she never helps herself and all that. But the way she goes and helps people is always just magical and entertaining and all that. So, there's another one on this list that I thought you were going to bring up. I thought you were going to bring this one up other than Amelie, and it's City of God.
Yeah, I'm a bastard. Like,
okay, so
I know it's amazing. I feel
City of God is still my number one movie of this new millennium.
Wow. And I would probably
how good it is.
You know, I think I have said Children of Men would be my number one. And we'll debate this some point on the podcast for sure. But listen, I have no doubt when I watch City of God, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to love it. I'm going to kick myself for not having seen it. I've just been told so many times it's so heavy that I feel like I have to get myself ready for it. Like, am I wrong?
Heavy? Like, oh, yeah. Whoever's been telling you it's like heavy. This movie's like, it's like a reincarnation of Pulp Fiction, but it's in Brazil. And
well, no one's ever sold it to me like that.
Oh my God. It's just, I mean, it's got all these different perspectives. It's almost told in an epic fashion because it starts off with the main characters young and then it shows as they get older and everything. And yeah, I mean, I guess there's some heavy stuff in it, but I mean, come on. I mean, the movie is just grabs you. It's kinetic as hell. And there are scenes in that movie that are just right in line with Jeremy Scott.
All right.
And I won't tell you what those scenes are, but I know that there's some scenes in there that you're going to be like, oh my God, that's so awesome.
Listen, you have never steered me wrong. Like, we disagree plenty of times, but every time you've said you need to watch this movie, I've loved it. And that goes for X-Men First Class. That goes for Rise of the Planet of the Apes. That goes for The Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yep.
3 for 3. So I will watch this movie, and I have no doubt I will love it, and I will not look back. But it's just one I haven't gotten to yet. So
yeah, it'll slay your ass.
I look forward to having that. Sounds fun.
Yes,
not bloody or painful at all.
Another huge one I noticed in these lists was The Lives of Others. You both haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Another unbelievably great movie. It takes basically if you guys like The Conversation, it takes that and then it takes it to I think it takes it to a new level. I think it's even better than The Conversation. It's just one of those movies, like, even after like the main story that we've been following is done, it still has a big surprise for you afterwards. And I remember when this came out, I don't know if I saw this in theaters or not, but then I eventually saw it. And I just, it's another one of those movies that I would have to consider is probably my top 10 of the new millennium. So, it's just, it's about a guy, he's bugged an apartment and he's listening in on these, like, sort of these radicals and everything. And, just hit a sort of a mystery involved, gets involved with that and everything. And, yeah, I don't want to say too much more about it. It's just a great movie.
I'd like to share a headline I just read on a website called Kotaku.com. Which I don't know if you read, but the headline reads, "The Warcraft movie is not good."
Oh.
And I'd like to issue that as breaking news.
Damn it. That's not a shock.
Because surely we all were expecting, like, the apex of cinema, video game cinema to boot from this film. But anyway.
Well, again, it's a problem when you get a guy who's done an independent movie that almost everybody loves. And I think everybody loves Moon and they love what Duncan Jones did with it. They just, and then they give them these big, huge projects afterwards. Like, oh, you did one movie. Let's do a huge movie now.
Well,
and of course, I don't know if anybody could make Warcraft work, but
Well, I agree with that. But the same thing, I mean, is Gareth Edwards kind of maybe the best example of this, where he did sort of like a small film, got attention, and then was given Godzilla? And
no, it's happening. It's happening all over the place. You have Colin Trevorrow, who did Safety Not Guaranteed, and then went on to do Jurassic World.
And now is doing Star Wars, and Jurassic World is not good. I don't understand this decision.
I didn't like it either. But it seems like that. And there's another. I can't remember who else is in this list. I think the Russo brothers might even be on this list.
Yeah, maybe.
Because they did a lot of TV.
Well, James Gunn did like the Scooby-Doo movies, and I really like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's probably my top 3 or 4 Marvel movies, but I think he had a similar jump.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, they're doing this more often now. In a way, they were doing it before, but the directors had a big resume. Like Sam Raimi, when he was tapped to do Spider-Man, he was mainly a small independent guy for a long time, but he had a huge body of work behind him before he did that. So
you could make an argument, even Christopher Nolan, given Batman Begins and that whole trilogy, was like ahead of the curve, right? Because that was before he'd made The Prestige and Inception, what are considered to be 2 of his best films. He just made Memento and that Alaska Insomnia movie, right?
Yeah. He had done that, and like before Memento, he did a movie called Following.
Never seen
Hugo Weaving.
There you go, full circle.
By the way, just as an aside, James Gunn wrote the screenplays to Scooby-Doo. He didn't actually direct them. But
thanks for correcting me publicly.
Well,
no, you're right.
Every time we do these things, I'm like, God damn it. There was one podcast where I told Barrett to cut me out like 4 times because I kept saying the wrong thing. And I was like, cause I was listening back to it and I was like, why did I say that? That's not right.
Man,
that's not right at all.
I'm happy that the guy I named and the movie I named were still connected, even if it was a different role. I'm just happy I got that much right.
He was still affiliated with it for sure. But anything else about this, top 100 that we need to talk about? I know that there's a few others on your list, Jeremy. You got Cinema Paradiso, which is it's just another great movie.
It always felt like a film school snob movie to me, the way people talked about it.
Fuck no. Okay. Fuck no.
Well, I trust you more than I do other people.
No. Yeah, it did win like best foreign language film and all that, and it does have like your occasional pretentiousness or whatever, but this movie, this is up my alley because it's about projectionists in movie theaters. And it's got that epic feel to it where you got a kid who grows up and, he falls in love and he's but he's got a father figure basically who's a projectionist at this theater, and just all the different things that they do in that movie. Like there's a scene where they have a sold out theater and there's like a mob of people outside who want to see the movie, and the projectionist finds a way to get the image to project outside and everything. And it's one of those magical moments. And yeah, exactly. And there's a line in there where the guy goes, I love it when the crowd laughs, and the kid's like, why? And he's like, because it makes me feel like I'm the one who made them laugh.
Yeah, dude, that's why I used to go into the back of Liar Liar when it was playing. Yeah, its original run. Like no movie, any portion ever made the audience laugh so consistently than those outtakes at the end of Liar Liar, man. It was gold.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's one of those. I mean, some of the people have been steering you wrong on some of these movies. All
right. I didn't listen to Chris Atkinson alone and no one else.
Yeah. So yeah, I love those movies, and I know that occasionally I'll say something like, like tonight, Good, Bad, and the Ugly isn't one of my favorites of all time. I know it's a lot of people's, but sometimes I just I'm not as big into those movies. But hey, I've got 3 or 4 there that I think you should go and watch. Yeah. Whatever. So,
all right. Well, I think we're all leaving this podcast with like a to-do list. Are we not?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll probably watch Singing in the Rain tonight.
Awesome, man. Make 'em laugh.
All right, so that is the end of an incredibly long SinCast. We talked a lot about a lot of things there. Yeah, we did. Guys, keep on going to SoundCloud. I think is what it's called. Keep going to SoundCloud and giving us comments. We are reading those, and those are helpful. Just tell us how much we suck or are great. We like them both.
I'll actually post the link to the IMDb Top 250 and tell us which ones that you haven't seen. There's a lot of back and forth on the SoundCloud comments, so keep them coming.
Yeah.
So, that'll be the SinCast this week. This is Chris Atkinson with Jeremy Scott and Barrett Scher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit CinemaSins.com.
Have I done my job up to your goddamn standards?
Yeah.
My standards will fit the model of drug-seeking behavior.
Yeah. I actually hate her in that movie.
I love her, but I don't like her in that movie.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I hate her in that movie.
Yeah. It's the accent, I think, though, right?
It's the accent and, it's a little bit overacting. Like, a little bit.
She also fucks the criminal in addition to her fiance cop, which I always find a little out of character.
Yeah, just out of nowhere,
you're being very vulnerable. That makes me want to fuck. Okay. Yeah. And as soon as they get done with the argument and everything, and he goes, "You want to have some coffee?" She's like, "Yeah, that sounds good, actually." What the hell?
I kind of was yearning for you there during that argument. I'm glad you.
When Matt Damon hits on her in the elevator, I know this is the point, but man, he holds up that elevator so goddamn long. I don't know why somebody doesn't punch him in the dick.
It's the same way
beyond.
I know it gets my OCD stuff going crazy.
Damn it, let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
Just step off. There's one flight of stairs you want. Jesus. It's like he wants everybody to see how awesome a flirt he is.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd stab somebody in the heart if it gave me your number.
It's probably the Goo Goo Dolls. You live right next to the Goo Goo.
Yeah, it's totally
it's Dautre, or however you say it.
Yeah.
Dautre.
Yes.
That's the French pronunciation.
Dautre.
Dautre.
I don't even know how to say the French pronunciation of my French book title. I know what the letters are, but I don't know how to say it in French.
What is it, Les Progressives or something like that?
Yeah, I say it less prodigious because that's how Americans say things. But
protégé.
Protégé. I don't know.
Prodige?
I'm sure it's the translation for protégé or prodigy.
You should go ahead and do that as an outtake.